my personal story, my family came over here from Vietnam. This was back in 1979. And this was after the communists had already come in and taken over the South. And so you couldn't just get an airline ticket and leave the country. So basically what we had to do was we had to secretly plan. My parents had to secretly plan and save money so that they could be smuggled out of the country. And so, it was a clandestine, effort. And it was something that my parents felt so strongly about because they didn't want to raise their children in this new environment. And so I remember that my first day of school, my parents had told me that I couldn't tell anybody that night we were going to be leaving the country and that I'd probably never see any of these people in my life again. And so that very night, around 2 in the morning or so, we snuck out in the middle of the jungle. And so we were supposed to meet up at this rendezvous point there with a couple of other families to get on a boat, no larger than just a small size room. And so it was my mother, my sister, who was a couple years younger, and my brother, who was less than a year old, and grandmother. And my father couldn't join us at that point because during when the boats would navigate through the waterways, typically they're patrol boats, and if they were just women and children, they'd let them go. But if there were men on board, they'd usually pull them all over. And so we had to meet my dad at the mouth of the river. So by the time we got there, he was nowhere to be found. And my mother really, she freaked out. She didn't know what to do, but we had to continue to go because there were other lives that were at stake. So for the next couple weeks, we were at sea, underneath the deck, running out of food, running out of water, the stench. I can still, if I were to smell that I know what that felt like. And so one day, people started panicking, and water started coming in from inside the boat, and so we were basically drowning. And so fortunately there was an oil tanker nearby, and we were able to flag them down and get their attention. And they were able to navigate close enough to us without crushing us because the oil tankers are huge and we're a tiny little vessel. So as they got close to us, we were trying to communicate our dire situation, and they didn't understand. And so they thought we needed some food, so they dumped these crates of fruits and vegetables. And we were, trying to tell them that we needed help. And so they were able to send a few engineers down to assess the situation, and then radio in to get authorization to pick us up, because there are certain international laws that exist with regards to picking up refugees. So I do remember that for the adults, they threw down these rope ladders where they would scale up the side of the big ship. And for the children, they had these big potato sacks where they'd throw the kids in there and then haul them up. So for the next couple of weeks, we were at sea on the ship, cooking and cleaning and building this great relationship with the crew, helping them. And finally, we docked in South Korea, where the ship was based. And we had the opportunity to go to France or to America. And we elected to go to France because my mother's sister lived there. And so we went to France and lived there. And in the meantime, we were able to correspond through letters, snail mail back then, back to Vietnam with my other grandmother to find out what happened to my dad. And so he was captured on his way to meet us and was taken to jail. And then eventually he tried to leave again, and he was captured and taken to a refugee camp in Malaysia. So again, through more letters and correspondence, we were able to find him and get in touch with him. And he had some relationships working for Esso back in Vietnam, which is the international version of Exxon. And he got us sponsored by a family in Texas to come to America. So through paperwork, he told us to go ahead and go to America. So we flew from France through New York, Ellis Island, and down to Texas, where we started over. And my mother, she sewed, she did whatever odd jobs to keep the family going. And then it took probably another year or so before we finally got all the paperwork to get done, before my dad was able to come over and we got reunited. And so, you know, in the process, we were very fortunate because there's many families that you know, lost their loved ones during the journey, and so that story is so impactful for me because it helps me realize, you know, how grateful I am for the sacrifices and the risks that my parents took for us to have a better life. And it's in these stories that, you know, really connect us as humans. And I really believe that it's these stories that really, you know, enriches our lives. It gives us appreciation, as well as it helps us discover ways that we connect with each other. And so that's why what I do is so important, is it's about helping share these stories as well as business stories and other life stories as well.